My name is Cassandra Hale. I'm 32. 8 weeks. That's how far away my wedding was supposed to be. The date that had been circled on calendars, printed on invitations, and quietly held in my mind like a promise I'd already started living inside. The venue was booked. Catering was paid. The honeymoon flights were sitting in my email like a countdown timer. I tried not to look at too often because it made everything feel too real, too close. Like if I stared at it too hard, something might crack. 5 years together, 1 year engaged. We weren't kids. We weren't some messy whirlwind couple fueled by chemistry and bad decisions. We were stable, intentional. The kind of pair people pointed at and said, "That makes sense." I believe that too. So when my fiancé, Liam Mercer, 31, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, asked me if we could talk for a minute, I didn't brace myself for impact. I was in the kitchen rinsing a mug, half listening to the hum of the dishwasher, thinking about the stupidest detail of all, whether the florist would be able to source the exact shade of ivory Liam had insisted was cleaner than cream. He didn't sit down right away. He stood by the doorway like a stranger, waiting to be invited in, one hand in his pocket, the other holding his phone like it weighed more than it should. "Cass," he said, and my name sounded rehearsed in his mouth. "Can we postpone the wedding?" I blinked once because the words didn't land properly. "Postpone?" I repeated. "What do you mean, postpone?" He didn't look at me when he answered. "I'm just not sure anymore." There are moments in life where your brain tries to protect you by slowing everything down, like it thinks if it drags the second out long enough, you'll find the right way to stop what's coming. I turned the faucet off. The kitchen went quiet in a way that made my pulse suddenly loud. "Not sure about what?" I asked carefully. "About us? About marriage? About the timing?" His jaw tightened just a fraction, not emotional, controlled, like he was holding himself in place. "I need time," he said, "to think, to be certain." 8 weeks before the wedding. After deposits. After a seating chart. After my mother had told every aunt and cousin like it was already a done deal. A slow coldness moved through me, not panic, something sharper, a kind of alertness. But I kept my voice level. "If you need time, then okay," I said. "I respect your honesty." He finally looked at me then, like he'd expected screaming, like he'd expected pleading. "You're not mad?" he asked. I let out a small breath through my nose, not a laugh, just air. "Disappointed," I admitted. "Yeah, but I'd rather you be sure than go into a marriage with doubts you'll resent me for later." He stared at me for a beat, and I could almost see the recalculation happening behind his eyes. The relief, the surprise, the way my composure made it easier for him to carry whatever he'd already decided. Then he stepped forward and wrapped an arm around me. It wasn't a lingering embrace. It wasn't affectionate. It was the kind of hug someone gives when they want to be able to say later that they tried. "You're a good woman," he said low. "That's what makes this hard." I didn't move my arms around him right away. Not because I was punishing him, because my body hadn't caught up to the moment yet. "Where are you going to stay?" I asked, once he let go. He cleared his throat. "I thought maybe I'd crash at my brother's for a bit, give us space." That made sense, too much sense. It was the kind of answer that sounded planned days ago. I nodded. "Okay." He left that night with a duffel bag and his laptop. No drama, no slammed doors, no long speech, just a quiet exit like he was leaving for a work trip. When the door clicked shut behind him, I stood there in the hallway for a long time, staring at the spot where his shadow had been. Then I walked back into the kitchen and opened my laptop. Because the adult part of me, the part that had built a career, bought property, managed teams, survived layoffs and lawsuits and late nights fueled by coffee and spite, knew what came next. If a wedding gets postponed this close, you don't just lose a date, you lose thousands. So I started calling vendors. The venue coordinator answered first. Her voice was sympathetic, professional, almost practiced. "Oh, honey," she said when I explained. "I'm so sorry. But yes, we can move your date within the next year without penalty. We'll just need a formal email request." A small miracle. Catering was less gentle. They asked questions I didn't want to answer, suggested it could be cold feet, offered to hold the deposit, but warned me the transfer would be limited. The photographer didn't pick up. The florist did, and her first response was, "Is everything okay?" I kept saying the same line. "We're postponing. We're just taking a little time." As if repeating it would turn it into something normal. By midnight, my voice felt scraped raw. My eyes didn't sting from crying. They stung from staring at a screen while my brain ran in circles trying to make sense of a man I'd loved for half a decade suddenly deciding he wasn't sure. I went to bed alone. And I didn't sleep. Not because I was sobbing into my pillow, not because I was spiraling like a cliche, but because my mind wouldn't stop doing what it does best, searching for patterns. The next morning, I woke up with a headache and the kind of heavy exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep. It comes from your life shifting under your feet. I made coffee I didn't taste. Then I remembered something small. A package. We'd been expecting a delivery, something stupid and domestic, like kitchen organizers or the spare charger Liam swore he needed for his office. I pulled up the Ring doorbell app on my phone to check when it had been dropped off, and it was a mindless task. Routine. The kind of thing you do when you're trying to pretend your life is still made of ordinary moments. The footage loaded. I watched the delivery guy place the package down, take a photo, walk away. And as I was about to close the app, I noticed the timestamp on the left side of the screen. Thursday, 2 p.m. Yesterday, while I'd been at work. My thumb hovered over the timeline without thinking. Curiosity is a quiet thing. It doesn't feel like danger. It feels like wanting to know. So I slid the bar back. A few hours earlier, the porch appeared again. The same doormat, the same potted plant Liam always forgot to water. Then someone walked into frame. A woman. Not a stranger. Not someone passing by. Someone I'd hugged at family dinners. Someone I'd laughed with at holidays. Someone whose number was in my phone under a name I'd never had to question. My cousin Brianna, 30. She stepped up to my front door like she belonged there. And then the door opened from the inside. Liam stood there, my fiancé. He didn't look surprised to see her. He didn't hesitate. He didn't ask why she was there. He smiled. And she leaned in, not for a greeting, not for a polite cheek kiss. She grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him close like she'd done it 100 times. And he kissed her back like he didn't have a wedding in 8 weeks. Like I didn't exist at all. My coffee cup slipped in my hand and hit the counter with a dull clink. The sound was small, but inside my chest, something broke so cleanly it felt quiet. I stared at my phone as the footage kept playing, as if my eyes could unsee it if I just didn't blink. Then my hands started shaking, not like weakness, like adrenaline, like my body finally understood it had been lied to. I slid the timeline back again, and again, and again. Every time Brianna appeared, it was always the same. Middle of the day, while I was gone, while I was working, while I was building the life Liam had been living inside. Sometimes she stayed for 20 minutes, sometimes for hours. And as I watched the pattern, one thought kept pressing itself forward, colder than any grief. He didn't postpone the wedding because he wasn't sure. He postponed it because he was buying time. Time to finish something he'd already started. I set the phone down on the counter like it was dangerous. Then I picked it up again. Because once you see a crack, you don't stop at the first one. You keep looking, and you keep digging, even when you already know it's going to hurt. I sat on the kitchen floor for a long time after that. Not crying, not pacing, just sitting with my back against the cabinet, phone in my hand, watching the same 30 seconds of footage on a loop, like my brain was trying to memorize it. Like if I studied it hard enough, it would eventually stop being real. It didn't. Brianna's hand in Liam's shirt, the way his shoulders relaxed when he saw her, the familiarity, the lack of urgency. That was the part that hurt the most. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was routine. I stood up slowly, knees stiff, and placed the phone on the counter as if I needed distance from it to think clearly. Then I did the thing people like to pretend they wouldn't do. I went back. I scrolled earlier in the week, then earlier than that. Monday, Sunday, the previous Thursday. Every clip was stamped with the same quiet betrayal. Midday visits, no hesitation at the door, no checking the street. Sometimes they laughed before they even crossed the threshold, like my house was a shared secret between them. At one point, Brianna showed up carrying a garment bag. I paused the footage and leaned closer to the screen. Not a dress, not shopping bags. A long, structured garment bag, the kind used for suits. Liam took it from her, held it up briefly, nodded. They disappeared inside together. My throat tightened, not from tears, but from recognition. Suit. My mind jumped ahead before I could stop it. Why would my fiancé need a wedding suit now? I scrubbed forward again. Wednesday. That's when I saw the clip that finally snapped the last thread holding my doubt together. They were standing on the porch together, shoulder to shoulder. Brianna was holding her phone up between them, scrolling. Liam leaned in close, not intimate, but intent, focused. I zoomed in. Thank God for 4K resolution. It took a second for my eyes to adjust. Then the screen sharpened and the words became clear. A venue website. elegant serif font, soft beige background, a scrolling gallery of manicured gardens and white stone arches, the Oak Ridge Atelier, one of the most expensive wedding venues outside the city. I knew it because my mother had sent me the link months ago saying, "Too much but beautiful." My chest tightened as I zoomed further. There, at the top of the booking form. Selected date, October 14th. My wedding date. Our wedding date. I sat back so abruptly the chair behind me scraped the floor. "No," I said out loud, to no one. "No, no, no." But the screen didn't change. They stood there for another minute, pointing at the phone, nodding. Brianna laughed at something Liam said. He tapped the screen once, decisively, like a man confirming a plan. I didn't move for nearly an hour after that. Just sat there, staring at the paused frame, my reflection faintly visible in the dark glass of my laptop screen. This wasn't just an affair. This was logistics. Planning, coordination, overlap. They weren't stealing moments. They were stealing a future. I finally reached for my phone again. Not to call Liam, not to scream, not to demand answers he would only twist. I called Rachel, my oldest friend. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, are you okay?" I didn't bother with small talk. "I need you to listen," I said, "and I need you not to interrupt me until I'm done." There was a pause. Okay. I told her everything. The postponement, the ring footage, the kiss, the venue, the date. When I finished, the line went quiet for a few seconds. Then Rachel exhaled sharply. "Cass," she said slowly, "that's not confusion. That's strategy." That word landed harder than anything else had. Strategy. Because it was right. Liam hadn't asked for time because he was torn. He asked for time because he was managing overlap. "Do not confront him yet," Rachel continued. "Promise me." I wasn't planning to. Good. Because if he knows you know, he'll pivot. People like this always do. People like this. I closed my eyes. "What do I do?" I asked. "First," she said, "you document everything. Every clip, every timestamp, every charge. You act like nothing's changed." I opened my eyes and looked around my kitchen. Our kitchen. The framed engagement photo still on the wall. The calendar with October circled in red. "Second," she didn't hesitate. "You protect yourself." That night, I downloaded every piece of footage. Every visit, every entrance, every exit. I created folders, labeled them by date, time-stamped everything, like I was building a case file instead of grieving a relationship. Then I pulled up our shared credit card statements. I hadn't wanted to look earlier. Part of me hoped ignorance would make it hurt less. It didn't. Charges I didn't recognize started popping out immediately. A men's tailoring studio across town. Multiple visits, deposits, rush-fitting fees. A catering tasting, not the one I'd attended. A photographer I'd never contacted. Each line item felt like a fingerprint left at the scene of a crime. And threaded through all of it was the same pattern. My card, my money, my wedding. Used to fund theirs. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Liam. "Hope you had a good day. I'm still thinking things through. Love you." I stared at the screen, my face calm, my pulse steady. Then I typed back. "I understand. Take all the time you need." I watched the delivered notification appear. Then I turned my phone face down on the table. Because if Liam thought he was the only one capable of waiting, he had badly underestimated me. I wasn't going to confront him. I was going to let him keep talking. Let him keep planning. Let him walk himself right into the truth, with witnesses. And when he finally realized what I knew, it wouldn't be in private. It would be somewhere he couldn't rewrite the story. Once you stop looking at someone through the lens of love, the picture sharpens fast. By the next morning, I wasn't searching for proof anymore. I had that. What I was doing now was something colder, something far more dangerous to Liam and Brianna than anger ever could be. I was mapping behavior. I took the day off work and didn't tell anyone why. I showered, dressed, made my bed, normal things, grounding things. If I let myself unravel, I'd miss details, and details were everything. I opened my laptop and started a spreadsheet. Dates, times, footage clips, credit card charges. At first, it felt excessive, dramatic, like I was overreacting. Then the pattern emerged. Brianna's visits almost always happened between 11:30 a.m. and 3 p.m., the window Liam knew I'd never be home. Sometimes she came straight from work, still in business casual. Other times she wore jeans and sunglasses like she was running errands. He never checked the street before opening the door. That told me more than any kiss ever could. People who are afraid get cautious. People who feel entitled get sloppy. I scrolled back through family texts from the past few months, something I'd never bothered to do before. That's when the little things started lining up. Brianna declining brunch at the last minute, her sudden work emergencies, the way she'd gone oddly quiet whenever wedding talk came up. No opinions, no excitement, just a polite smile and a quick subject change. At the time, I'd thought she was being respectful. Now I saw it for what it was. Avoidance. She didn't want to hear about my wedding because she was planning one of her own, with my fiancé, on my date. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly through my nose. Then I made the call I'd been putting off. "Rachel," I said when she picked up, "I need a favor." "Name it." "I want to know if there's any chance I'm missing something. Some explanation that doesn't involve betrayal and fraud." She didn't sugarcoat it. "Cass, the only thing you're missing is how long they've been lying." That night, I did something I wasn't proud of, but I wasn't ashamed either. I created a burner email. Simple, generic, no connection to me. Then I reached out to the Oak Ridge Atelier. "Hello, I'm inquiring about availability for October 14th next year. Best, M. Morrison." I chose the name carefully. Liam's last name. I hit send and waited. They replied within 2 hours. Polite, professional, cheerful. "Thank you for your interest. October 14th is currently being held with a deposit for the Morrison Hale wedding. Please let us know if you'd like to be added to the wait list." My hands didn't shake this time. They felt steady, almost numb, because that confirmed the last thing I'd been trying not to believe. They weren't just talking about a wedding. They had already put money down. My money. I forwarded the email to myself, saved screenshots, archived everything twice. Then I opened Instagram. Brianna's account was private, or so she thought. She'd forgotten about one thing. 3 years ago, when she'd briefly quit social media, she'd accepted a follow request from an account I used for work-related browsing. I'd never unfollowed. She'd never removed me. Her stories popped up immediately, soft-filtered quotes on neutral backgrounds. Sometimes the right love comes at the wrong time. Following your heart takes courage. Not all paths are meant to be understood. And there it was, a reply, a heart emoji, from Liam. I closed the app without watching the rest. I didn't need to. The next layer revealed itself when I checked the shared credit card again. The tailoring studio charges weren't just deposits. They were completed fittings, multiple appointments, alterations, rush tailoring. Liam wasn't browsing. He was finalizing. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, a strange, hollow laugh escaping before I could stop it. He hadn't postponed my wedding because he wasn't sure. He postponed it because he already had one. Just not with me. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Liam. "Thinking about you. This is harder than I expected." I stared at the words, then typed back. "I know. Take your time." That afternoon, I packed a small bag and drove to a cafe a few blocks away from my house, a place with outdoor seating and a clear view of the street. At 12:47 p.m., Brianna's car pulled up. At 12:49, she walked to my front door. At 12:50, Liam let her in. I didn't feel anger watching it happen live. I felt clarity. 3 hours later, they left together. Not rushing, not hiding. Hands brushing, comfortable. I followed them at a distance. Not close enough to be noticed. Just close enough to see where they were going. They parked in front of a sleek storefront with dark glass and understated gold lettering. A men's tailoring studio. The kind that advertised bespoke wedding suits. Liam stepped out first, straightened his jacket, checked his phone. Brianna followed, adjusting her sunglasses. They walked in together. I didn't go inside. I didn't need to. 40 minutes later, they emerged. Liam was on the phone, voice low but confident. "Yeah," he said. "October 14th. Everything's moving forward." He paused, listened, then added, "No, don't worry about that. It's handled." Handled. I sat in my car until they drove away. Then I pulled out my phone and made one more call, this time to a number I hadn't dialed in years. "Hey," a woman answered cautiously. "Who's this?" I swallowed once. "My name is Cassandra," I said. "I think we need to talk about Liam." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then she spoke, quiet, careful. I was wondering when someone would call. That was when I knew. This wasn't going to end quietly, and it wasn't going to end kindly. Her name was Emily, Liam's ex. We didn't meet in person, not yet. That conversation wasn't ready to exist in the same room. We talked over the phone, voices low, cautious, like two people approaching the same wreckage from opposite sides. "I didn't know how to reach you," Emily said. "He told me you two were complicated, on a break, that the wedding was postponed because you weren't sure." I closed my eyes. "Did he tell you when?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "About 4 months ago." 4 months. That was when the air in my chest finally thinned. Not panic, not grief, just the unmistakable realization that I'd been standing in the middle of a story that started long before I knew I was in it. He said you were practical, Emily continued, that you wanted stability more than love, that he felt trapped. Trapped. I pictured Liam standing in my kitchen, asking for time with his hand in his pocket like he was holding a script. I pictured Brianna on my porch, comfortable, familiar. He told me you knew, Emily added, about him seeing someone else. No, I said quietly, I didn't. The line went silent again. I'm sorry, she said after a moment. And this time it didn't sound like courtesy. It sounded like recognition, like she was finally placing the weight of what he'd done. We exchanged facts, dates, places, overlapping lies. Emily sent me screenshots, messages from Liam talking about our wedding, like it was an inconvenience. A temporary obstacle, something to be worked around. I didn't react to them right away. I saved everything. Then I told her the truth. I'm not calling to ask you to confront him, I said. I just want you to know what's actually happening. And I want you to protect yourself. She exhaled. He told me you were emotional. I almost laughed. That night, Liam came back to the house to grab a few things. I knew he would. I'd left his favorite jacket hanging by the door on purpose. He knocked like a guest. I opened the door and stepped aside without a word. You look tired, he said, glancing at my face like he was checking for cracks. Long days, I replied. Vendor calls. He nodded, didn't offer to help. He moved through the house quickly, efficiently, like someone who didn't want to linger. He grabbed clothes, toiletries, his watch. Then, without asking, he went into the bedroom. I followed him. He opened the closet and reached for the garment bag I'd bought him months ago. The one I'd imagined him wearing on our wedding day. This one too, he said, lifting it. I held his gaze. Why? I asked. He paused for half a second, just enough. In case we move things, he said. Dates change. I want to be ready. Ready. I stepped aside and let him take it. He zipped the bag and slung it over his shoulder. Then he turned to me, expression carefully neutral. I'm sorry I'm putting you through this, he said. You deserve better. There it was again. That line. Practiced. Polished. I agree, I said. He blinked. Just once. What? I said I agree. He stared at me like he was waiting for something else. Tears. Accusations. A question. He got none. After he left, I locked the door and leaned my forehead against it. Not because I was weak, but because I needed the weight of something solid. The next morning, I called Rachel again. I'm ready, I told her. For what? To end this, publicly. She didn't ask questions. She knew me well enough to understand what that meant. We mapped it out carefully. No yelling, no ambush, no scene that could be rewritten as hysterics. Facts, documents, witnesses, and a setting where lies wouldn't survive. The Oak Ridge Atelier had a viewing scheduled for Wednesday at 2:00 p.m. I knew because Liam had posted a champagne emoji with the caption, Big Day, not publicly, but to a circle he thought was private. I forwarded the information to my lawyer. Is it legal to show up? I asked. As long as you don't threaten anyone, she said. Truth isn't a crime. By Tuesday night, everything was ready. The files, the footage, the emails, the receipts. Liam texted me again. Hope you're okay. This is hard for me too. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I know, I trust you. I turned the phone face down and went to bed. Not to sleep. To wait. Because the thing about people who believe they're in control is that they never see the moment coming when the floor disappears. And tomorrow, I was going to take it away. Wednesday came quietly. No storm, no warning. Just a clean, bright afternoon that felt almost insulting in its calm. I arrived at the Oak Ridge Atelier 15 minutes early, dressed like I was going to a meeting, not a confrontation. Black blazer, neutral expression, hair pulled back tight enough to keep my thoughts from spilling out. My lawyer, Marissa, met me in the lobby. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't offer comfort. She handed me a slim folder and said, Everything's in order. That was all I needed. We sat in a pair of low-back chairs near the entrance, close enough to see the door, but far enough back to blend in. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and money, white stone floors, soft instrumental music, the kind of place designed to make people believe their happiness would last forever. At 2:07 p.m., the door opened. Liam walked in first. Suit jacket sharp, posture confident. The same man who'd stood in my kitchen asking for time, now moving with the certainty of someone who thought his plan was working. Brianna followed him in, hand resting lightly at his elbow, like she'd earned the right. She looked pleased. Not nervous, not cautious. Pleased. They checked in at the front desk. I heard it clearly. Hi, we're here for the Mercer Hale appointment. Hale, my last name. Used without hesitation. The coordinator, a woman in her 40s with an immaculate smile, beamed at them. Of course. We're so excited to walk you through the space today. She gestured toward a hallway lined with framed photos of weddings that probably cost more than my first car. Right this way. They followed her. So did we. The viewing room was smaller than I expected. Intimate. Designed for couples to imagine themselves inside a dream. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Soft drapery. A table already set with champagne flutes and brochures. Welcome, the coordinator said brightly. We're thrilled to help you plan your big day. She turned to Liam. October 14th, correct? Yes, he said without missing a beat. That was when I stepped forward. Actually, I said calmly, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The room froze. Liam turned first. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. Brianna stiffened beside him, her hand dropping from his arm. Cass, Liam started. I didn't look at him. I looked at the coordinator. My name is Cassandra Hale, I said evenly. And that date you're holding? It was booked under my name, with my deposit. The coordinator blinked, confusion flickering across her expression. I'm sorry. Marissa stepped forward smoothly. Marissa Cole, attorney, she said, placing the folder on the table. We're here to address the fraudulent use of funds and misrepresentation related to this booking. Brianna found her voice then. This is private, she snapped. You can't just barge in here. I finally turned to her. You've been barging into my house for months, I said. Consider us even. Liam took a step toward me, palms raised slightly, defensive, not apologetic. Cass, this isn't what it looks like. I tilted my head. You're planning a wedding, with my cousin, on my date, using my money. What part of that needs clarification? The coordinator's smile was gone now. I'm going to get my manager, she said quickly. As she left the room, Marissa opened the folder. She laid everything out with clinical precision. Bank statements, contracts, emails, screenshots. Then she slid her phone across the table. Ring doorbell footage. Liam and Brianna at my front door. Liam letting her in. The kiss. Brianna's face went pale. That footage was taken without our consent, Liam said sharply. It's from my client's security system, Marissa replied. Installed legally, on her property, while you were trespassing under false pretenses. Liam's jaw clenched. He didn't argue further. Because he knew. Brianna turned on him then, voice low and furious. You said this was handled. I said not to worry, he shot back. I didn't think She trusted you, I said. That shut him up. The manager arrived a moment later, expression grave, as Marissa explained the situation again, slowly, clearly, with no room for misinterpretation. When she finished, the manager nodded once. I'm very sorry, she said, looking at Liam and Brianna, but we cannot proceed with a booking under these circumstances. Your tentative hold is canceled, effective immediately. Brianna gasped. You can't do that. We can, the manager said, and we are. Liam turned to me, anger finally breaking through the control. You didn't have to humiliate us, he said. This is between family. I met his gaze steadily. You stopped being family the moment you decided to steal my life and thought I wouldn't notice. His mouth opened, then closed, because there was nothing left to say. As Marissa and I turned to leave, Brianna called after me. This isn't over. I paused at the door and looked back. Oh, it is, I said. The consequences just started earlier than you planned. And then I walked out, not shaking, not crying, just done. The fallout didn't wait for the door to close behind me. By the time Marissa and I reached the parking lot, my phone was already vibrating in my hand, missed calls stacking up like warnings I'd chosen to ignore. I didn't answer any of them. Marissa stopped beside her car and turned to me. From this point on, don't engage directly, she said. If they threaten legal action, they go through me. If they apologize, you ignore it. Apologies at this stage are just damage control. I nodded. I wasn't tempted to do otherwise. What surprised me was how steady I felt. Not relieved, not victorious. Just steady, like something that had been wobbling for months had finally clicked into place. I drove home and parked in my own driveway, the same one Brianna had walked up so confidently so many times. The house looked unchanged, quiet, ordinary. Inside, my phone rang again. This time I glanced at the screen. Aunt Lorraine, Brianna's mother. I let it ring out. Then came a text. How could you do this to her? She's devastated. I stared at the message for a moment, then set the phone down. 5 minutes later, my mother called. I answered hers. Cass, she said without preamble, what happened? I didn't dramatize it. I didn't soften it either. I found out Liam's been having an affair with Brianna for months. They were planning a wedding on my date, using my money. I confronted them at the venue with a lawyer. The booking was canceled. There was a pause. Then, do you have proof? Yes. Send it. I did. She called back 10 minutes later, her voice sharper than I'd heard it in years. "Don't answer your aunt," she said. "I'm handling that." True to her word, I could hear the yelling through the phone an hour later when she called me back. Raised voices, overlapping accusations, my mother's controlled fury cutting clean through all of it. Apparently, Lorraine had known. Not everything, but enough. Enough to be complicit. By evening, the story had spread through the family like a live wire. Cousins texting carefully worded messages, uncles calling to check in. An aunt who'd always been neutral suddenly declaring she'd suspected something for a while now. Liam tried again that night. He showed up at the house. I watched him through the window as he stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, posture rigid. He knocked once, then again. I didn't open the door. Instead, I spoke through it. "You need to leave." "Cass, please," he said. "We need to talk." "No," I replied evenly. "We don't." I never meant for it to happen like this. I almost laughed. "You meant for it to happen quietly," I said. "That's the only part that went wrong." Silence. Then his tone shifted, cooler, defensive. "You're destroying lives over this." I rested my forehead briefly against the door, not because I was weak, but because I wanted him to understand how final this was. "I didn't destroy anything," I said. "I stopped participating in a lie." He stood there for another moment, then left without another word. The next morning, the financial cleanup began. I called vendors again, this time with clarity. The caterer refunded 70% of the deposit as store credit. The photographer agreed to 50% back after seeing the documentation. The florist refunded everything. "Honestly," she said quietly, "I saw the posts. I wouldn't take her money either." By Friday afternoon, I'd recovered most of what I'd lost. Liam, on the other hand, was losing ground fast. Emily texted me updates I hadn't asked for but didn't stop. She'd moved out of their shared apartment, closed their joint savings account, sent his mother screenshots. "He's spiraling," she wrote, "and it's not pretty." That evening, my Aunt Lorraine finally left a voicemail. Her voice was trembling with anger. "You've humiliated this family," she said. "You've turned everyone against Brianna. How do you expect us to recover from this?" I deleted it without responding. Because the truth was simple, even if no one wanted to say it out loud. They weren't upset about what had been done to me. They were upset it had been exposed, and exposure has a way of changing everything. By Sunday, the last thing tying me to the future I'd planned was still sitting in my bedroom dresser drawer, the engagement ring. I took it out, held it in my palm for a moment, and felt nothing. No nostalgia, no grief, just weight. I closed the drawer again. There would be time for that later. Right now, the consequences were still rolling in, and I had a feeling the worst of them hadn't landed yet. The confrontation I was waiting for came the following Friday. I was at work when security called my extension. "There's a man downstairs asking for you," the guard said. "Says his name is Liam. Wants 5 minutes." I closed my eyes. Of course he'd choose my workplace. Neutral ground. Public enough to restrain himself. Controlled enough to believe he could still manage the narrative. 5 minutes, I said, in the cafe across the street. I wasn't giving him my office. I wasn't giving him privacy. And I wasn't giving him leverage. He was already there when I arrived, standing, not sitting, like he didn't want to appear too comfortable. He looked thinner, not wrecked, just frayed at the edges. "Thanks for agreeing to this," he said. "I didn't," I replied, taking the seat across from him. "You asked. I allowed." He nodded, lips pressed together. Defensive posture, familiar now. "I'll get straight to it," he said. "I'm sorry." I didn't respond. "I know that doesn't fix anything, Nitam," he continued, "but I need you to understand, what I had with Brianna, it got out of control." "No," I said calmly. "It was managed. You scheduled it." His jaw tightened. "You don't get to define it," he snapped. "I do," I said. "You used my money, my house, my name. You planned a wedding while asking me for patience. That's not confusion. That's fraud." He leaned forward. "You ruined my life over this." I looked at him then, really looked. "You ruined your life when you decided I was too safe to respect," I said. "I just stopped covering for you." He scoffed. "You didn't have to make it public." "I didn't," I said. "You did, when you walked into a venue with my last name on the booking." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he exhaled hard. "Brianna's pregnant." There it was. I didn't react. I didn't gasp. I didn't ask questions. "Congratulations," I said flatly. He frowned. "That's it?" "That's all," I replied. "Your life choices no longer concern me." He stared at me like he was searching for something. Regret, maybe. Or fear. Or the version of me who would have softened at that news. He found none. "This could have been handled differently," he muttered, standing. "Yes," I agreed, "by not betraying me." He left without another word. That afternoon, the family implosion finally peaked. My Aunt Lorraine sent a group message to the entire family thread accusing me of cruelty, selfishness, and destroying a young couple's future. Before I could even respond, my grandmother replied. One line. He cheated on Cassandra with her cousin and planned a wedding on her date. That's not love. That's theft. The thread went silent. Later that night, my mother came over with takeout and no questions. We ate in comfortable quiet until she finally said, I'm proud of you. That mattered more than I expected. The following week, the ripple effects kept coming. Liam lost his job, not because of the affair, but because HR had been documenting his extended lunches for months. 3-hour absences, frequent off-site meetings. When I sent timestamps from my ring footage to Emily at her request, she forwarded them to his employer. They didn't need motive. They needed proof. Brianna took leave from work. Personal reasons, according to my aunt. Translation. Everyone knew. The wedding industry, apparently, was smaller than I'd realized. Word spread. Venues declined bookings. Vendors suddenly became unavailable. Actions have a way of echoing. On Sunday, we gathered for my grandmother's birthday dinner. 30 people, one long table, too much food. Liam wasn't there. Brianna was. She sat at the far end, eyes down, posture tight. Halfway through dinner, my grandmother cleared her throat. Brianna, she said, voice steady. Where's Liam? Brianna hesitated. He couldn't make it. My grandmother nodded once. Good. He's not welcome. Aunt Lorraine opened her mouth to protest. My grandmother didn't let her. I raised children, she said. I know the difference between love and entitlement. I won't host either. No one argued. After dessert, my grandmother pulled me aside and pressed something into my hand. The ring. The family ring Brianna had once admired too closely. I want you to have this back, she said. It was never meant for dishonesty. I closed my fingers around it, not as a symbol of loss, but of clarity. By the time I got home that night, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. Do you forgive me? I didn't reply. Because forgiveness isn't something you ask for when consequences arrive. It's something you earn long before they do. By the time the noise died down, the damage had already settled into place. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where the world clapped back and said, this is what you get. It was quieter than that. Slower. The kind of unraveling that happens when people stop returning calls and doors stop opening. I noticed it first in the absence. No more texts from Liam. No more surprise appearances. No more messages pretending to be concerned. Whatever script he'd been working from had finally run out of lines. Emily sent one last update a week later. He tried to apologize again. Said everything spiraled. I blocked him. I'm done. I didn't respond right away. When I did, it was just, good. That was enough. The wedding refunds trickled in over the next few days. Not everything, but enough that the loss no longer felt like a wound, just an expense. Something accounted for, something closed. I used the remaining credit with the caterer for my grandmother's birthday brunch the following month. She laughed when I told her. Good, she said. At least something joyful comes out of it. Work became my anchor. Not as an escape, but as proof that my life hadn't stopped just because someone else tried to reroute it. My boss didn't ask invasive questions. He just told me to take the time I needed and handed me a new project that demanded focus. I welcomed it. At home, I took the engagement photo off the wall. Not dramatically, no tears. I lifted it down, placed it face down on the table, and slid it into a drawer. I didn't throw it away. I didn't destroy it. I just removed it from sight. Brianna didn't reach out again. From what I heard through the family grapevine, she and Liam were still together. Technically, in the way people cling to the one thing they sacrificed everything else for. They were trying to make it work. No venue, no vendors, no enthusiastic relatives. Just two people staring at the consequences of their own choices, wondering why it didn't feel like a victory. My Aunt Lorraine stopped speaking to my mother. My mother didn't lose sleep over it. Trash doesn't announce when it takes itself out, she said. It just leaves. On a quiet Thursday evening, I finally opened the drawer and took the engagement ring out. I held it under the kitchen light and examined it like it belonged to someone else. No anger, no sentiment, just an object tied to a version of my life that no longer existed. The next day I sold it. Not to a pawn shop, to a legitimate jeweler who didn't ask questions and didn't offer condolences. I donated the money to a small support organization for people navigating betrayal and financial abuse. Then I posted the receipt. No caption, no explanation. The message traveled on its own. A week later, I ran into Liam at a gas station. He looked tired, not ruined, just worn, like someone who'd spent weeks arguing with reality and lost every time. Cass, he said, tentative. Liam. He stopped himself, then tried again. I'm sorry. I know, I said. And I meant it. Not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement. Do you think someday? No, I said gently. Some things don't reset. He nodded, like he'd expected that answer. As I finished pumping gas and got into my car, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Calm, grounded, unmoved. Not healed completely, but honest. And that was enough. Because the opposite of love isn't hate. It's clarity. And I had never seen more clearly in my life. 3 weeks after everything collapsed, the world settled into something almost normal. Not before, never that. But after, the quiet that comes when the dust finally sinks and you're left standing in the shape of your own life again, unobstructed. I was at my kitchen table on a Sunday morning, coffee cooling beside my laptop, when my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Your aunt says Brianna is pregnant. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back. Okay, that was it. No shock, no questions, no emotional spike. Because if you line the math up honestly, the timing had always been there, hidden in plain sight. The late afternoons, the work emergencies, the urgency disguised as romance. My mother called a few minutes later. She's due in October, she said. Around the same time your wedding was supposed to be. I exhaled slowly. Of course she is. Silence stretched between us. Your grandmother says the baby isn't welcome at Christmas, my mother added carefully. I almost smiled. Harsh, maybe. But my grandmother had always believed that boundaries weren't cruelty. They were clarity. The family fallout finalized itself quietly after that. My Aunt Lorraine stopped calling entirely. Brianna stopped attending family events. Liam became a name people lowered their voices around. Oh, that's him. That's the one who, with his cousin. They'd become a cautionary tale. And that, I realized, was worse than being yelled at. I took the remainder of my recovered wedding money and booked a solo trip to Europe. 2 weeks. No itinerary locked. No one else's preferences to consider. I posted photos, nothing excessive. Cafes, museums, sunlight through old windows. Liam watched every story. I knew because Instagram tells you. Emily and I met for coffee once. Not romantic, not awkward. Just two women who'd survived the same man from different angles. He keeps trying to win me back, she said, shaking her head. Like nothing happened. That tracks, I replied. She laughed softly. You know what the saddest part is? What? He thinks losing you was bad luck, not consequence. I nodded. That's why it'll keep happening. A few days after I got back, there was one final knock at my door. I didn't need to check the camera to know who it was. Liam stood on the porch holding a 6-pack of beer like a peace offering. Not drunk, not emotional, just desperate enough to try. We've known each other since we were kids, he said when I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. 25 years. Doesn't that count for something? It did, I said, past tense. I can fix this. I shook my head. You can't fix betrayal. You can only stop repeating it. He looked down at the spears in his hand like he'd forgotten why he brought them. You really don't feel anything anymore, he said quietly. I met his eyes. No, I said. I feel something very specific. What? Relief. He left the beers on the porch when he walked away. I gave them to my neighbor. That night, lying in bed, I thought about how betrayal changes you. I check the ring footage more often now. I question motives faster. I trust slower. But I also don't ignore patterns anymore. I don't explain red flags away. I don't confuse comfort with character. And I don't sacrifice clarity for peace. Liam wanted excitement. Brianna wanted what she wasn't supposed to have. They got each other. That's punishment enough. I got my money back, my dignity intact. In a story I'll never have to apologize for telling. People still ask at family gatherings, so, what happened? I smile and say, the wedding didn't. And that's the truth. Time did what it always does when you stop fighting it. It moved on. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or closure speeches, just forward, steady, indifferent, effective. A few months after everything, my life stopped being the aftermath and went back to being just mine. Work stabilized. I took on a leadership role I'd been quietly circling for years, but never stepped into because I'd been planning a wedding instead. Funny how much mental space opens up when you're no longer carrying someone else's secrets. Family gatherings adjusted. There were new seating arrangements, topics we didn't linger on, names that stopped being mentioned unless necessary. No one defended them anymore. That part mattered more than I expected. I heard through the grapevine that Liam and Brianna were still together, technically, living with her parents, arguing about money, about trust, about why things didn't feel as romantic now that there was nothing left to steal. Reality has a way of draining excitement out of people who confuse secrecy with passion. One afternoon, months later, I ran into my grandmother again. We were folding laundry together at her place, something quiet, ordinary. She looked at me over her glasses and said, "You know, you didn't lose a wedding." I waited. "You escaped a marriage that would have eaten you alive." I nodded. That night, I deleted the ring footage from my phone. Not because I was in denial, because I didn't need it anymore. The proof had done its job. I still believe in love, just not the kind that requires me to shrink, excuse, or wait quietly while someone else decides my worth. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's not about revenge. It's this. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And when they try to build a future on top of your silence, tear the foundation out from under it. Not with rage, with truth.